Vlog 94, glad you could stop by. It's me, Jaime, the shut-in musician and cartoonist. And it's a Saturday. It is the only June 27th of 2020. And yes, we are vlogcasting from the beautiful Corn Tortilla Press World Headquarters located in Alameda, California. And just finished my first cup of coffee. I'm going to run down and get a second one, but I'm not going to do that yet. Today we're going to talk about, quickly I hope, music, as I've been going back and forth between comics and music. I'm not going to always do that. I'll talk about other stuff too, but right now it's the little thing I'm doing. And I'd like to talk a little bit about AM radio. I've been working on a story, a comic story, multi-page story for years, probably 25 years on AM radio. And I want to get it right because it was a pretty important thing to me as a kid. And we moved a lot when I was a kid and a young kid. I mean, we lived all around the state, it seemed like. I either went with my mom and we stayed, for, a few years, like in San Francisco, or I got farmed out. And I'd spend a lot of almost every summer, most of my summers in LA, in East LA specifically. And one year I also got sent to San Diego, where I spent a whole school year plus bookended each summer on that in North County, which got me into surfing. I didn't know anything about it till I moved into this neighborhood down there. But anyway, neither here nor there. AM radio, though, was the one thing that was always kind of my little favorite thing. And in the late 60s, my mother used to collect S&H green stamps. I'm going time warp here. S&H green stamps or blue chip stamps, and I did both. And they had these, they were stamps you put in booklets. I'm just explaining for those who don't remember or know. And you went to these outlet stores. They're kind of like outlets, like little department stores. You brought your stacks of books in with stamps, and they would have all these items on the shelves and in display cases. And for X amount of stamps, you can redeem them for said items. Blankets, crock pots, radios, all sorts of flatware. I mean, you name it, they had it. And I didn't go with her, but my mom went with, I think, my godmother. And they went down there, and she came home with like blankets and towels and I think a crock pot or something. And she said she had a present for me, which was rare. Outside of our birthday and Christmas, that was rare. And she brought me a transistor radio. It was a little black and silver thing in the black case, it was like fake leather maybe, I don't know. And it had that little cream color earpiece you put in your ear, had a little wire. And oh man, my grandfather supplied me with the Rayovac 9-volt batteries whenever I needed them, the little blue and yellow ones with a little kitty cat on there. And oh, my world was open. I mean, I was probably, we had a clock radio I listened to, but this was, I was between 6 and 7 years old. So this is around the Summer of Love on. And in San Francisco, I would listen to KYA or KFRC, I think KRLA, and we were in East LA. And XERB, I think it was, the Border Blaster station was on. And I remember in the summers you could pick it up real well. And Wolfman Jack would be on there. Because I remember my cousins were all flipped out about him, and I became a fan. And I can't remember the station in San Diego. For the life of me, it was obviously started with a K. Doesn't matter. I think it was Kogo, K-O-G-O or something like that. I don't know. There's a San Diego person my age on there. Maybe you could write below. Anyway, though, my point is AM radio back then, and the story I'm doing, all the research I've done, they said the height of AM radio was between the mid-1960s and the mid-1970s. And boy, I tell you, man, you would hear, like just starting with the 60s, the thing was in 1 hour's time, you would hear the Beatles, whatever they put out. I remember in 1969, they had a new song called Hey Jude. That was my favorite song at that time. But even before that, I would hear, Marvin Gaye, which would go into Nancy Sinatra, which would go into the Cowsills. Remember them? What was that song called? The Park, The Rain, The Park, and Other Things. I like that song. It's a great pop song. But you'd hear that, and you'd get, of course, the healthy doses of commercials, though. That was the thing. It was commercial radio. And Ginzerly Diamonds was the one that, I could remember their jingle to this day. Because it was just so, because I listened to AM radio up till probably the mid-70s. I was listening to FM at that point, too. But AM, I still had a little radio. Or if I was in cars, Yeah, Ginzerly Diamonds. Something if you're really smart. Anyway, yeah, you guys probably remember that one too. And my point is, the bands that were out then, one I like to bring up just real quick, just randomly, is the Rascals. They started as the Young Rascals, or the Little Rascals, the Young Rascals. I can't remember. They wore these hokey little outfits at first. But these guys were, I think, they were a little bit underrated. I felt they were bigger and better than one would think. I mean, they had songs, of course, like "Good Lovin'" and "People Got to Be Free." Oh God, "A Beautiful Morning," and of course my favorite, "Groovin'," which until I bought this record or CD, but I could still call them records because it is a recorded thing. I love "Groovin'." I didn't realize they released two different versions of it in Spanish and Italian. And so I think that's really cool. And things like that were done back then. And AM radio, and this brings me to the point before AM radio, it went through phases. Then AM radio by the early 70s, FM was out, better fidelity. There was a station in Sacramento called KZAP. It's back. It's online. I listen to it every now and then. But when the KZAP first started out, they were very experimental too. They would have like bluegrass hour, and they'd play kind of avant-garde jazz and rock, and then they would have big sections of time for albums with really like King Crimson back then, and longer cuts. But then sadly FM radio became ghettoed out. It became different neighborhoods. Suddenly now you want to hear say Marvin Gaye, or at least in those days, like Earth, Wind and Fire, or the Daz Band, whatever. You have to go to urban contemporary, the code word for Black or African American music. You wouldn't hear them on the pop station anymore because the pop stations were going away. And KZAP became an AOR station, like most of those stations did, which is album-oriented rock. So then you'd hear Aerosmith and Van Halen and Led Zeppelin and blah 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 blah, and country stations, whatever. And it eventually evolved into even oldie stations, which now oldie stations, unfortunately, music for when I was a teenager in my 20s. But it comes up then to where video, MTV. And in my opinion, it was exciting when it first came out, but really, let's be honest, it fucked everything up. That song that MTV played wasn't one of the first tunes they played, was "Video Killed the Radio Star." And I believe that. It's a lot of truth into that. I mean, back as the bands I was just talking about, the Rascals, you didn't know what they looked like. You knew what the Beatles looked like, but you didn't know what half these groups look like King Harvest, who did Dancing in the Moonlight, or Brenton Wood with Oogum Boogum. Those are all on. I can hear all those in 1 hour between Ginzerly and Diamond. But when video came in, man, suddenly now they're selling an image. And then the image became in the forefront. And being a tunesmith, you still had to be a tunesmith, but it was kind of pushed a little bit more back. And I'm going to say something rather radical here and probably controversial. I like using the example of Michael Jackson's Thriller album. Good album. I think it's a good album. But I don't think it was the greatest album, even though it has all those sales and everything. Because what really pimped that record was, what did he call them? His mini movies or whatever they were. Which they were just long fucking videos, dude. But they were all sales. It was all just sales. And that's what sold the album, was the visuals. I still think his Off the Wall album was much better. But that's me. All right, kids. I will now get off my soapbox before I hurt myself. I do need another cup of this. Oh, and finally though, I do want to say one thing else, just to put in there. Starting with an AM radio, you remember in the 70s, some of you became stereo freaks. And I had a shitty stereo, I didn't mind, but I had friends with good ones and I appreciated them a lot. And then suddenly, from all of this, we've come full circle to phones. And this is just like, another version, just like an AM. They only sound better than AM radio. All right. If you're going to go out today, go ahead and do it. Put your mask on. Don't forget to wash them hands as they do. And don't touch anybody. And be kind to yourself. Be kind to other people. Enjoy the weekend. While you're at it here, just go ahead and subscribe below if you wish. Or you can also go to my website, which I'll also put the address below, corntortillapress.com. I promise you I'll be changing it soon. It may be this week. This week we're off, but we're going to be doing some things. But anyway, so the drawing's going to be kind of off to the side. All right, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful day, a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much for tuning in. I do appreciate it. And I will see you all tomorrow. Thanks.